The cool morning air carried the scent of pine as three close friends, David, Mark, and Lisa, drove down a winding road toward Moonlight River. The trip was supposed to be simple, a weekend of camping, fishing, and escaping the noise of the city. No one could have imagined what would happen next. David, an adventurer at heart, was the most excited. He had always felt at home in nature, believing that the wild had its own way of calling certain people. Mark, always the cautious one, had packed extra safety gear, ropes, and supplies, just in case. And Lisa? She was the storyteller of the group, her camera always ready to capture moments that would one day become stories. As they arrived, the river stretched before them like a silver ribbon, flowing lazily under the golden sunrise. The water was calm, the breeze gentle. A place like this felt eternal, as if nothing bad could ever happen here. Then, something unexpected. A dog. A golden retriever stood at the edge of the clearing, its amber eyes watching them. It was alone, no collar, no sign of an owner, just watching. Lisa took a step forward, hand extended. "Hey there, buddy." But the dog didn't move closer. Instead, it lowered its head slightly, as if deciding whether to trust them. Then, just as quickly as it appeared, it turned and disappeared into the trees. Mark chuckled. Stray dogs always know where to find free food. But David felt something different. There was something about the way the dog looked at them, like it knew something they didn't. They shrugged it off, unloading their bags, setting up camp and laughing about the adventures they'd have over the weekend. Yet, in the back of David's mind, the image of that silent, golden-eyed dog lingered. Have you ever felt like an animal was trying to tell you something? Some believe animals can sense things that humans can't. Danger, emotions, even the supernatural. Do you believe in that instinct? The day unfolded in perfect harmony. The gentle rustling of trees, the distant chirping of birds, and the occasional splash of fish breaking the river's surface made Moonlight River feel like a sanctuary. David stretched his arms wide, taking in the fresh air. "This place is unreal. It's almost too peaceful." Lisa snapped a few photos. "Maybe it's just what we need, a break from the world." Mark, always practical, was already setting up fishing rods. "Well, let's make the most of it. Who's up for a challenge?" David grinned. "Oh, you're on." As the hours passed, laughter filled the riverside. Mark and Lisa stayed near the shore, while David, ever the thrill-seeker, wandered further down the bank, drawn by a stretch of deeper water that looked perfect for swimming. And then, there it was again. The dog. Sitting on a small hill just above the river, its golden fur catching the sunlight. It watched David, unmoving. Something about the way it sat, ears perked, eyes fixed, body tense, made David hesitate. "What's up, boy?" David called out, half expecting the dog to wag its tail and come closer. But it didn't. It just stared, like it knew something he didn't. For a moment, a strange unease settled over David, but he shook it off. What could a stray dog possibly know? With a deep breath, he stepped into the water. The moment, everything changed. The river was cooler than expected, sending a shiver through his body. As he waded deeper, the smooth pebbles beneath his feet gave way to a soft, muddy bottom. "I bet I can swim across and back before Mark even catches one fish," he thought, grinning to himself. But as he reached the middle of the river, something went terribly wrong. A sudden sharp pain shot through his right leg, a cramp so intense that his muscles locked up instantly. He gasped, tried to move. Nothing. Then the current took hold. His body lurched downward, dragged by the water's unseen force. He tried to scream, but the shock had stolen his breath. "Number, this isn't happening." His arms flailed, his head dipped under, and for the first time in his life, David felt something he had never truly known. Helplessness. The desperate struggle. From the shore, Mark had just reeled in a fish when he heard a splash, louder than usual. Lisa, looking through her camera, instinctively turned toward the river. "Where's David?" she asked. Mark followed her gaze. David was gone. Then, a hand broke through the surface, fingers clawing at the air. Lisa's heart stopped. "Mark!" she screamed, dropping her camera. Mark's blood ran cold. "David!" He ran forward looking for something, anything, to throw. The river was too far for him to reach. Lisa's hands trembled as she grabbed her phone, but there was no signal. David was drowning, and they couldn't do anything. The watchful eyes. Just then, on the hill above them, something moved. The dog. Still watching, still silent. Then, in a flash of golden fur, it ran, straight toward the water. Lisa barely had time to process what she was seeing. "Oh my God, it's going in after him!" The dog launched itself into the river, cutting through the waves like an arrow. Its powerful strokes were not random. It was moving with a clear purpose. It was going after David. Have you ever felt a sense of doom before something bad happened? Like your instincts were warning you? Do animals truly have a sixth sense about danger? Or was this dog just acting on instinct? David's world had turned into a swirl of water and darkness. His chest burned as he struggled to breathe, but every time he opened his mouth, only water filled his lungs. His limbs felt like they weighed 1,000 pounds, his vision blurred. "This can't be it. Not like this." But his body wasn't listening anymore. The river, once calm and inviting, had turned into a silent predator, dragging him deeper, swallowing him whole. Then, something grabbed him, a sharp, firm pull at the collar of his soaked shirt. For a moment, his fading mind thought it was a hand, that Mark had somehow reached him. But hands don't have fur. The grip tightened, and suddenly, David felt himself moving upward instead of sinking. The dog. A fight against the current. Lisa and Mark watched in disbelief from the riverbank. The golden retriever was pulling David up, its powerful legs kicking against the current. But the river wasn't letting go easily. The waves crashed against them, pushing them further away from the shore. Each stroke took every ounce of strength the dog had. Lisa's fingers dug into the damp earth. "Come on, boy. Come on." Mark was already waist-deep in the water, ready to grab David if he got close enough. And then, a final desperate push. The dog angled its body with one last surge of energy, forcing David's head above the waterline. A gasp. Air filled David's lungs, his first breath in what felt like forever. Then, Mark reached them. With a grunt, he grabbed David's arms and pulled him onto the shore. David collapsed, coughing violently, water spilling from his mouth. Lisa dropped beside him, tears streaming down her face. "You're okay. You're okay." The golden retriever stood a few feet away, panting heavily, its fur dripping wet. But its eyes never left David. It wasn't done yet. A moment of silence. Then, the unbelievable happens. For a few heartbeats, no one moved. The only sound was David's ragged breathing and the distant rush of the river. Then, the dog did something that made Lisa and Mark freeze. It took a step forward and placed its head gently against David's chest. Not sniffing, not nudging. Just resting there, listening. Then, it let out a soft whimper. A sound so filled with emotion that it didn't feel like an animal's cry at all. More like relief. As if the dog had been waiting for this moment. As if it knew it had just saved someone it was always meant to save. Do you believe animals can form a connection with us before we even know them? Have you ever had a moment where an animal seemed to understand you more than words ever could? David lay on the riverbank, his chest rising and falling in deep, labored breaths. His mind was still foggy, struggling to make sense of what had happened. But one thing was clear. He was alive because of that dog. Lisa and Mark sat beside him, their hands still trembling. The golden retriever stood a few feet away, its fur dripping, its amber eyes fixed on David. And then it moved, but not in the way they expected. Instead of shaking off the water or wandering away, the dog turned toward the trees, walked a few steps, and then started digging. The hidden secret, a past that refused to stay buried. At first, they thought the dog was just scratching at the ground, trying to dry itself off. But it wasn't. Its paws moved with purpose, sending dirt flying. A few inches, then deeper still. Mark frowned. "What's it doing?" Lisa slowly got to her feet. I don't know." Then they saw it. Something buried beneath the earth. Lisa's breath caught in her throat as she stepped forward. The dog stopped digging and sat back, as if waiting for them to see what it had uncovered. Lisa knelt down, brushing away the loose soil. Then her fingers touched something hard. A box. It was old, rusted at the edges, as if it had been underground for years. Lisa hesitated, her heart pounding. "Guys, what is this?" Mark crouched beside her and carefully pried the lid open. Inside, they found 3 things: a leather-bound journal, the cover worn, the pages yellowed with time, a small silver pendant, dented and tarnished but still shining under the sunlight, a folded photograph. Lisa picked up the photo, her hands shaking as she unfolded it. And what she saw made her blood run cold. It was a picture of a man standing near Moonlight River, with a golden retriever by his side. The same dog, but the photo looked decades old. The past comes rushing back. Mark grabbed the journal and flipped through the fragile pages. The handwriting was neat but rushed, as if the person writing it had been in a hurry. Then he read the first few lines aloud. "August 7th, 1982. I don't know if anyone will ever find this, but if you do, know that I tried. I tried to save him. The river took my brother that day, but his dog never left. It waited, for years, as if hoping he'd come back. I buried this here because some things are too painful to keep. If you find this, please don't forget them." Silence. David's fingers tightened around the pendant. His breathing had slowed, his heartbeat steady again. Then he whispered, "The dog was waiting for someone." Lisa swallowed hard. "And now it saved you." Mark's voice was barely above a whisper. "It was never just a stray, was it?" The golden retriever looked up at them, silent, patient. Then, in the softest movement, it took a few steps forward and pressed its forehead against David's hand. A single moment, a connection that defied time itself. Do you believe some souls stay behind, waiting to fulfill an unfinished purpose? Was this fate, or something more? A memory carried through time. The golden retriever's warm head rested against David's trembling hand. He barely felt its fur. His mind was too overwhelmed by what had just happened. This wasn't just a rescue. This was a message from the past. Lisa and Mark sat in stunned silence, their eyes shifting between the dog and the old photograph. The dog's soft brown eyes held something that no words could explain. Loyalty, patience, purpose. For a moment, David just stared at it. Is this even possible?" he whispered. Lisa finally spoke. "I don't know, but it happened." David exhaled, his fingers tightening around the old pendant. For years, this dog had waited by the river, carrying a memory that time should have erased. And now, it had saved him. A realization settled over him like a weight in his chest. This dog never left. It never gave up. It kept waiting, because it was meant to save someone. Maybe it had been waiting for him. Maybe some souls don't forget their purpose. Maybe some promises are never broken. David slowly sat up, his body still weak from the near drowning. The dog lifted its head and stepped back, giving him space. Then, without a sound, it turned toward the trees. and walked away. David's heart clenched. Wait, but in just a few steps it was gone. No rustling branches, no footprints in the mud, just vanished. Lisa wiped a tear from her cheek. Mark's hands were still shaking. David looked down at the photo in his hands, at the man from the past standing by the river with the very same dog. He swallowed hard. It's finally free now. Mark exhaled. Yeah, I think it is. For a long time, the three of them just sat there, staring at the spot where the dog had disappeared. And for the first time since the accident, David no longer felt afraid. The river had tried to take him, but someone, had been waiting to bring him back. And now, it had. Do you believe in fate? In unseen connections that stretch beyond time? Have you ever had an experience where an animal seemed to know more than it should? If this story moved you, share it. Maybe someone else needs to hear it today. And if you believe in the mysteries of life, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories that make us question the world we think we know. Because some stories stay with us forever.